One last thing I will say is McGann herself is blissfully ignorant. Ayaan Hirsi McGann, blissfully ignorant of the Islamic tradition, the underqualified, overconfident, ultra-crepidarian, academic charlatan, right-wing apple polisher, obsequious woman that she is, doesn't even know that it doesn't even know the basics of the Islamic tradition. Mentions in her book Heretic in page 77 that we worship Muhammad. She doesn't even know the basics of the religion. She makes squandering mistakes one after the other about gender in jurisprudence in Islam in her latest.
So she lied in her application for asylum. Honestly, I don't care. She made up her name. She said that she came directly from Somalia when she didn't, to escape the civil war. She wasn't in the middle of that.
Who is Ayaan Hirsi? A liar, a fibber, a fabricator. What is a liar? A person who tells lies, a teller of untruths, a fabricator, a false testimony. In 1992, she lied to the Dutch authorities about her name, her age, and about fleeing civil war in Somalia. She had in fact been living in Kenya for over 10 years and has never experienced a war in her entire life, so she made her whole background up. Lie number 2. After being exposed, she lied again about escaping a forced marriage which she had refused to attend. That was a whole lie because she was in love with the man and later on met up with him in Europe. To the contrary, her brother, aunt, and former husband all testified that she was indeed present at her wedding. So she made the whole story up to get some sympathy. Lie number 3. She also lied about fearing an honor killing from her family after abandoning her former husband, who she was in love with. And later on, she in fact maintained close contact with her family after asylum, and also later even met up with her former husband, like I said. Lie number 4. After losing all credibility in Northern Netherlands, she has since been labeled as a leading public intellectual in the United States with no background. She has never published a single peer-reviewed paper. Her honorary degree offer was also revoked by Brandeis. So basically, she has no background, but also they just made her intellectual somehow. She claims Muslim women are held captive and are like frightened birds trapped in a cage. This is despite the fact that her Muslim mother worked for a British woman and traveled to many countries. So she makes things up as she goes along. She said that Muslims were responsible for 70% of the world violence while being interviewed on the Jon Stewart show, making her statistics up. Although she provided no evidence, she later made a similar claim citing the International Institute for Strategic Studies. When the institute was asked to confirm this, it was revealed that such a figure has never been stated. So she made it all up. She made her.
One is that she lied during her asylum proceedings when she was trying to get into the Netherlands. Okay, she did. She admits that now, and she admits it thoroughly in the interview.
Older than her by 1 year, the older brother of Ayaan Hirsi.
Is Ayaan Hirsi's brother. In Nairobi, he takes us to the house where the family lived for a long time. The house is on a guarded street. It's a well-to-do neighborhood in Kenya, not Somalia like she lied. No war, no nothing in Kenya. She was actually being educated to where she even got to learn English. And that's actually her room facing the front. And she actually has a very large room to where now when they went back to the house, it houses a whole family in one room, a family of 5, where she had a room to herself, learning English. But yet she claimed she was being taught backwards. Regardless, her mother is still Muslim till today, who traveled the world working for a British woman. That's the room that she used to have. So she lied about her whole past, her whole identity, her whole background, her whole everything. Just for money, for a little bit of fame, and for that Zionist neocon funding to push hate, fear, and war. Wake up, sheeple. Their family isn't strictly Islamic because he went to a Christian school, she went to a Islamic school, and it says that her mother wasn't really big on religion, she was more into education. Went to a beautiful school, as you can see, well-educated school. Learned English and everything there.
The school for 4 years. So she left in 87. with a diploma or certificate?
She might have got a certificate, O-level certificate. I was not the headmistress then. This school is one of the best in Nairobi, or in this country. It's one of the best. And many of the children who got their education here, they are now
And her name is
doctors and
Ayaan
lawyers.
McGann Hersey.
And,
Went to the best school in the country.
she got her education here and she became an MP. How come she became an MP if she wasn't properly educated in a school like ours?
Facts.
Gave her good education, and that's how she became an MP.
Facts. Hersey Ali admits that she didn't witness the civil war in Somalia. Her asylum story is made up, like that of so many economic asylum seekers who also pretend and want residence permit. When you apply for asylum here, you first talk to someone from the refugee aid who trains you, and they really prepare you. And they explain that if you have a reasonable fear of persecution or prosecution, you receive the A status. If you experience terrible things in your country of origin, or on your way here that are grave and distressing enough, you've received the C status, a humanitarian status, and that's the status you wanted. On that basis of all that information, I sat down and wrote a story. Listen to that. Wow. Ayaan Hersey makes up a story. So she made up her whole story just off knowing what the refugee aid told her, so she can stay. And she received asylum within 5 weeks. Nobody's ever received asylum within 5 weeks. She flees Somalia before the civil war even started. She spends 12 years in relative luxury in the capital city of Kenya. She received a good education paid for by the refugee organization by the UN, as she's a political refugee in Kenya. In the Netherlands, she conceals her background, alters her name, again obtains political asylum in 1997, becomes a Dutch citizen. But if Kenya is such a safe country for her, then why did she come to Europe? For more money, greed, fame, and to spew fear, hate, and confusion for that good Zionist and neocon money. People, stay away from these people that keep you confused, man. This woman admitted that she did all of this and that she made up her whole background story, and people still listen to her misinformation and fake propaganda.
She joined the American Enterprise Institute, that is the home of all the neocons who were in favor of the Iraq War and would like to invade Iran now. So apparently she's being smeared for that. But in an interview with Reason magazine, where they actually asked her real questions, they asked her about those affiliations. So if she's a liberal within that group, she could easily say it and say, I disagree with their foreign policy. Here's what happened instead. Reason magazine asked, do you see eye to eye with high-profile AEI hawks, such as former Bush speechwriter David Frum and former UN ambassador John Bolton? Hirsi Ali. Most of the time, I do. For instance, I completely and utterly agree with John Bolton that talking to Iran is a sheer waste of time. Now, John Bolton is as much of a neocon as there has ever been. John Bolton thought that we should get rid of 10 floors of the United Nations. Too much talking, too much diplomacy. Massively in favor of the Iraq War, would like to attack Iran now. She says, what is this? Completely and utterly agree with John Bolton on his Iran policy. My friend, you are not a liberal. You can call yourself many things, but you're not a liberal. In foreign policy, you are a neocon. There are no liberals who agree with John Bolton's Iran policy. So you're just simply wrong. Now, if you want to say you're a liberal in other regards, well, that's your business, and I'm not going to judge that. But in foreign policy, you are as aggressively militaristic as it comes. You're not convinced yet? Okay, now let's move on to what she says about Islam. Reason magazine asked her, do you think Islam could bring about similar social and political changes? She says, only if Islam is defeated. Now, this is beginning to be problematic, but if she means Islam as an idea, well, okay, I think that's an interesting point, and I would have that discussion, and I might even agree in part. But she doesn't mean that. Here's what she says. Don't you mean defeating radical Islam? She says, no, Islam, period. Once it's defeated, it can mutate into something peaceful. It's very difficult to even talk about peace now. They're not interested in peace. Islam, period. Wait, it's about to get worse. Reason follows up. We have to crush the world's 1.5 billion Muslims under our boot? In concrete terms, what does that mean? Quote, defeat Islam. Hirsi Ali. I think that we are at war with Islam, and there's no middle ground in wars. This is not an ideological war. This is not a war of ideas and principles. Reason very specifically asked her, wait, you don't mean crush them under our boot, do you? You don't mean all of Islam, do you? She said, yes, I do mean all of Islam. And yes, there is no middle ground in a war. It's a real war. One more. Hirsi Ali says, there comes a moment when you crush your enemy. Reason asks, militarily? Hirsi Ali says, in all forms. And if you don't do that, then you have to live with the consequence of being crushed. So anyone who tells you that Hirsi Ali is a liberal and doesn't actually believe in a military solution and is not really at war with Islam and only means it symbolically is lying to you. She doesn't mean it just symbolically. She means it literally. She is a neoconservative in foreign policy that believes the right answer is war, bombing, and that's why she works for the American Enterprise Institute. And they could point and say, oh, look at this former Muslim. And even she agrees. And she's a liberal. That's what they claim. She's a liberal. And even she agrees we must bomb the Muslims. That's exactly what they want. You served it on a platter to them. So don't come around here pretending that you're a liberal. You're no such thing. So she lied in her application for asylum. Honestly, I don't care. She made up her name. She said that she came directly from Somalia when she didn't to escape the civil war. She wasn't in the middle of that.
That she was the same individual that Anders Breivik, the individual who was responsible for killing 77 individuals in one of the most prolific crimes in the last 100 years, that individual dedicated an entire chapter to Ayaan McGann. So the challenge really is, and I will repeat this, if someone wants to quote aspects of the Islamic discourse, aspects of the Islamic jurisprudential tradition, and juxtapose it with the Western discourses, especially here we're talking about second wave feminism, and expect Islam to correspond with those, they'll be utterly and bitterly disappointed, because clearly we believe our system is superior. We believe the system is failing. We believe that nuclear households are being destroyed in the West. We believe that you've got it wrong. We believe that we've got it right. And so in order to defeat us in argument, you must first argue from first principles. And so yes, we do have differences with Western, especially second wave or third wave feministic discourses, but that does in no way show or indicate that Islam is misogynistic. To the contrary. And one last thing I will say is McGann herself is blissfully ignorant. Ayaan hirsi McGann, blissfully ignorant of the Islamic tradition, the underqualified, overconfident, ultra-crepidarian, academic charlatan, right-wing apple polisher, obsequious woman that she is, doesn't even know that it doesn't even know the basics of the Islamic tradition. Mentions in her book Heretic in page 77 that we worship Muhammad. She doesn't even know the basics of the religion. She makes squandering mistakes one after the other about gender in jurisprudence in Islam in her latest book Pray. You can see it in page 151, where she makes a series of unsubstantiated claims about Muslim women and their rights in Islam, saying that their rights can be sold to strangers and all kinds of nonsense propositions which have no basis in the religion of Islam. So if you really want to know about women's rights in Islam, one has to go to the source, and this ultra-crepidarian academic charlatan Ayaan is just a failure who's been let in by the most unusual types of affirmative action program to the neoconservative circles because she has no academic acumen at all.